Okay.
Okay. Excellent. Hi,
Okay.
David. Yep.
Okay.
I want to pull up a quick slide. This is from the recently released Energy Information Agency Clean Investment Tracker. And again, if you're listening, I'm going to describe this because you won't be able to see it. But one of the things that it shows is that global investment in energy is about $3 trillion in 2024, $1 trillion in oil and gas, and $2 trillion in power production. And that includes energy efficiency, renewable energy, grids and storage, and nuclear. And when you put all those things together, it is twice as much as oil and gas at this point. So the world is moving rapidly towards these different forms of energy, and no one is moving there faster than China. So there is also a chart that I'm showing that shows the annual renewable capacity additions globally. And what it shows is that China went from, in 2022, about a little less than 150 gigawatts of renewable capacity additions, all the way to 300. The entire G7 was less than 100. Now, Texas actually rates in this because we put in probably about 7 or 8 gigawatts in 2023. So we were probably about 10% of what the entire G7 put in. But compared to China, it's practically nothing. There was a fascinating article in the Financial Times last month. It's dated May 12th, and it's the first time that I have heard the phrase electrostate. It may have been used other places that I just haven't heard it, but it really kind of stuck with me. And the article from the Financial Times is titled "How Xi Sparked China's Electricity Revolution." And I want to just read 2 paragraphs from it. China is on its way to becoming the world's first electrostate, with a growing share of its energy coming from electricity and an economy increasingly driven by clean technologies. It offers China a strategic buffer from trade decoupling and rising geopolitical tensions with the U.S. The country is not only rapidly advancing towards self-sufficiency in energy from secure domestic sources, but also wields vast power over the markets for the resources and materials that underpin technologies of the future. This is huge. China made a strategic decision roughly 10 years ago, a little bit more than 10 years ago, that they were not going to be reliant on oil and gas exporters, including the Middle East, Russia, and the United States. They didn't have oil of their own, so what were they going to do? They were going to become an electrostate, not a petrostate like Iran, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Russia to some extent. They're going to be an electrostate, the world's first. This gives them a massive strategic advantage in the 21st century, which the United States desperately needs to keep up with, but may not be able to. And why would we not be able to keep up with that? One reason is because of our own choice. There was an article in Politico recently that I want to pull up here that is titled "China's Head Start on Clean Energy is Shaping the Debate on the Republicans' Mega Bill." There's an article that was in Politico a couple of days before the House passed the budget bill. And it says when it comes to winning on clean energy, Trump just isn't interested. They quote a former Department of Energy official in the first Trump administration, Daniel Simmons, as saying, "To all appearances, it is not a battlefield that they care about." Now, the case I want to make to you here is that if we don't compete on that battlefield, China will own the 21st century, because power production is absolutely key to just about anything you want to do in your economy, including the AI race. If you want to develop artificial intelligence and artificial general intelligence, you are going to need massive amounts of power. So where is that going to come from? Well, at the beginning of the administration in February, Trump established an Energy Dominance Council. We do not yet have that report. I'm still waiting for it. I'll be one of the first to read it when it comes out, but we have some clues as to what's going to be in there. I want to play for you a clip from Doug Burgum's appearance on the All In podcast. For those of you who listen to the podcast regularly, you'll remember that Glenn Hammer, the president and CEO of Texas Association of Business, told me on the podcast that I needed to listen to this episode. So I did, and I found it incredibly interesting. Let's listen to this clip.
So let's talk about the energy demand equation. The US is forecasted to increase its electricity production capacity from 1 to 2 terawatts by 2040, 15 years from now. During that same period of time, China is going to go from 3 to 8 terawatts. And that China forecast, by the way, excludes any of the Gen 4 nuclear reactors, the new hydroelectric facilities, and the new thorium, or if that ever scales, that they're considering rolling out in addition to what they've already planned to roll out. So in the next 15 years, China is adding 5 Americas in electricity production capacity. And if everything gets automated, factories are automated, AI becomes the great accelerant of the global economy, China is hugely advantaged relative to where we sit today. What do we need to do about it?
Well, if you were to ask me what's the thing that keeps me awake at night, this is the issue. And it's so thrilling and refreshing that you understand the scale, the magnitude, and the importance of this, the AI arms race, which is really driven by access to electricity. And China last year brought on 94.5 gigawatts of coal-powered electricity.
So Burgum says what keeps him up at night is that China's developing more energy. And what he cites there is that they built 95 gigawatts of coal. Now, as a point of fact, they commenced construction on 95, but what they actually built was about 30 or 40 gigawatts. But let's look at this. Let's look at what China is actually doing with coal. What Secretary Burgum left out of his discussion on the All In podcast was that China is developing 5 times the amount of renewables as they are compared to coal. So this is from that same Financial Times article that called China the first electro state. And yes, they are building a lot of coal. And yes, that is concerning for a whole lot of reasons. But make no mistake, they are absolutely developing more renewable energy than they are coal by a long shot. So he said 95 in 2024. Again, those were beginning construction. Depending on whose stats you look at, they completed somewhere between 30 to 50 gigawatts of coal. They built 277 gigawatts of solar in 2024 alone. Now, to put that in perspective, Texas is the 8th largest economy in the world, and we have 180 gigawatts of all resources combined. China built 277 gigawatts of just solar in just 2024. An electro state indeed. So the administration is clearly hostile to renewables. You hear Secretary Wright talk about this all the time. President Trump talk about it all the time. And Secretary Burgum was asked on this All In podcast, where's our power going to come from? Let's listen to what he had to say.
We got to keep everything going. We got to go fast on the small modular nuclear. But again, that's really kind of in the 2030s. So that's in our next. It's in the important, but it's a little less urgent. We need to fast track all that stuff. Long term, that's where the solutions will likely lie. But in between now, 2025 and 2030, a lot of it's going to come back to LNG because the fastest thing we can get online for more electricity generation is LNG power plants.
LNG power plants.
LNG power plants. This is his answer to where our power is going to come from. LNG power plants. Folks, LNG power plants aren't a thing. There is no such thing as an LNG power plant. There's some small applications in New England or the upper Midwest where there's not enough pipeline capacity. They might liquefy some natural gas and then use it in the winter when they're in shortages. But that's not the same as an LNG power plant. That's just using natural gas in a different form as a fuel. They're going to regasify it before they use it in the power plant. LNG export terminals take a massive amount of power. There is one in Texas that is connected to the grid. It uses 700 megawatts of power, roughly equal to the city of Waco or the city of Lubbock. LNG doesn't produce power for the grid, it consumes it. So if you want to actually have LNG exports in this country, and you'd like to have them grid connected because their costs are lower and more certain, like the Freeport LNG facility is grid connected, you're going to need a lot of renewable energy. So this is really kind of where I think the administration is going completely off the rails and is just utterly and completely missing the point of what we need to do in the United States to be able to keep up with China. And this is something the guys at the All In podcast covered just a couple of weeks later, the day after the U.S. House passed a bill to end all or most of the clean energy tax credits. Let's listen.
I just want to be honest and say this is not it. And there has to be some meaningful reforms in the Senate version of this thing that gets sent back to the House. So I'll give you an example of one. 81% of the incremental energy that's generated in the United States last year came from private enterprises that were investing in short-term forms of power that have a credit and a transfer market tied to it. This is just the financial machinery. This is how Blackstone and Goldman Sachs and Brookfield and all of these big players move tens and hundreds of billions of dollars around. They changed those rules at the 11th hour. What is the impact of that? Elon foreshadowed it. Nick, maybe you can show the headline of the article. He said, we could be running into a power capacity issue by mid next year. Now, if we knew that, why would we take the short-term incentive away to generate more electrons?
So there you heard a Trump supporter talking to other Trump supporters, talking about how the bill that just moved through the House will take away the ability for private capital to invest in power capacity in the United States of America when we were already going to be in a capacity crunch. This makes no sense. We are heading for an economic catastrophe if the House version of that bill passes. Forget about AI revolution or powering robotics or any of these pie in the sky things that, and I don't mean to use this word derisively, but the tech bros, which I think the all-in guys safely can be called, all of those dreams, those futuristic, techno-optimist dreams, done, over. There is no way to power what we need in this country, even for what we've got already. It's just sort of the general growth from industrial electrification and transportation electrification. Forget about all this other stuff if that bill were to go into place. But they went further.
But look, I don't like America's fiscal picture at all. But what if the AI and robotics revolution plays out in the most optimistic way over the next decade, and it's massively deflationary, and we get basically AI-powered robots expanding the economy massively?
You need power for that.
I get that, and we need to do power generation for sure. But my point is just, what if the new technology provides an answer to the fiscal situation that's not currently on the table?
I think it can.
So that's my point is Washington's not going to embrace.
I understand, but you're going to have brownouts and blackouts of average human homes to do that? No, you shouldn't have to make these decisions. Those are dumb trade-offs.
You're not going to be able to solve the power generation problem in a reconciliation bill.
You can't solve all of America's energy problems in a reconciliation bill, but you know what you can do in a reconciliation bill? You can make America's problems a whole lot worse. And that is what the bill that passed the U.S. House would do. So they continued on with this conversation later. They went through a whole lot of other topics, but I want to fast forward to the very end of their hour and a half. It starts at like an hour and 23 minutes in, and I do encourage you to listen to the whole thing. But I want you to hear this part in particular, because I think this is really the deal. We're a country with 38 trillion in debt. Our bonds are being sold at a much higher interest rate, which means that the estimates of the deficit, that the deficit additions from the quote unquote big beautiful bill, that are the estimates are at 3 trillion. That's at a 3.5% interest rate. That's something they covered on the All In podcast. If it goes up to 5%, you're adding 8 trillion to the deficit. We absolutely have to have economic growth in this country to be able to deal with that debt, because the alternative is austerity. So they're going to talk about this at this point. So let's hear what they had to say about the potential to maybe grow our way out of this, and what is the limiting factor for that kind of growth.
Given the amazing advances that you see coming with CRISPR biotech, but also AI, robotics, what are the odds that we can
think
grow
this is
our
what
way
it's
out of
done.
this fiscal problem?
Yeah, yeah. I'll be honest, I think the limiting fact, so the CRISPR side is going to have profound effects in longevity, human health, and food abundance. So those are, I think about abundance in 4 ways. One is abundance of food or calories. One is in abundance of labor through automation. One is in abundance of lifespan or longevity. And one is an abundance of what I think is the most important and gating factor, which is energy, which leads to everything else. So you can't have the labor savings without the energy and the productivity improvements without the energy. So the thing I do watch the most, Sachs, and that I do think, you and I have talked about this, that I do think is the critical linchpin for all of those other points of abundance being unleashed is the energy equation. And this is where I look very clearly and plainly at what China's doing versus where we're at today. We've got stated intentions, but the actions are where we're still, we got to start showing up. That's it.
But let's assume that we have enough power. I mean,
Yep.
my point's
No
really
problem.
about,
Yeah, if we have enough power, the 38 trillion of debt doesn't matter.
Really? You're saying that in a,
No, I'm very,
Sure.
very serious way.
but that's a pretty important conclusion, because if that's true and we can grow our way out of this problem,
Yep.
then that's an alternative to having this austerity approach where
You're right.
for which there's no political,
You're right.
will.
Energy is the key limiting factor, the key gating item more than anything else. So David Friedberg has done a lot of different things in his career. He thinks about a lot of different things. They were just talking earlier about CRISPR and gene editing. Of all these things, energy is the one that really could make the biggest difference. And as David Sachs said, well, that's a pretty important conclusion. Yes, that is a very, very important conclusion. And this is why it is so key that the Senate fix the mess that the House sent them. Because if you limit that energy production, you are limiting everything else in the economy. So just after that, and again, I do encourage you to listen to that whole conversation on energy in the last 7 or 8 minutes of that particular episode of the All In Podcast. It's linked there, obviously, in the show notes. Listen to the whole thing because they go into it more and get into the fact that China is adding a 0.5 terawatt or so of power every single year, while we in the United States are piddling away with literally an order of magnitude, more than an order of magnitude less power generation being added. Again, 277 gigawatts worth of solar added in China in 1 year. The entire generating capacity of the United States across all energy sources, about 1,200, 1,300 terawatts. They put in 277 just of solar, just in 1 year. They are kicking our ass, and it's not close. We are getting demolished in this race right now. So are we going to need some more gas generation? Sure. They're not going to be LNG power plants. There is no such thing. But we are going to power LNG with the grid. And we're going to power AI with the grid. And we're going to power oil and gas fracking operations and desalination and robotics. And you could go transportation, heat, industrial activity. All of it is going to take massive amounts of power generation. So you have a choice. A lot of folks on the right in the Trump world are saying all natural gas. We want an all natural gas grid. I see this in my comments in LinkedIn all the time. Give me 100% gas grid with a 20% margin. That would be phenomenally expensive. Absurdly expensive. And by the way, it would not be a very reliable grid, because we have seen during Winter Storm Uri, during Winter Storm Elliott, just a couple of days ago from when I'm recording, there were outages in New Orleans. It was actually a nuclear plant that went down, but they've only got 2 or 3% wind and solar. They had 100,000 people on rotating outages. You can integrate renewables into a grid in a way that makes the grid more reliable. 100% gas grid is not more reliable. It is far more expensive. And in a lot of key ways, it's less reliable because you have what you call correlated risk, right? It's just like if you're an investor, you don't invest in one stock because now you have all this correlated risk. One thing goes wrong with that company, you've lost all your money, right? You diversify. You put your eggs in different baskets. because every single generating source has some weakness and some strengths. So you use the strengths and you try to mitigate against the weaknesses. But that's one vision. Could yes, try to build an entirely gas grid. You can't get the gas turbines right now, right? And because you want to export gas overseas, you have a policy that is specifically going to drive up the cost of gas while you want to power your whole system with gas. So explain to me how that's going to work. Obviously, the more sensible solution is to have a mix of different generating resources, including gas, but developing advanced nuclear, getting geothermal into place as quickly as possible, and using what we have right now, which is very low cost wind, solar, and storage, and demand side solutions, distributed energy resources, energy efficiency, demand response. And by energy efficiency, right, we're talking about reducing during those peaks. We want people to use more energy. Using more energy is a good thing. Austerity, when you're talking about budgets or you're talking about energy use, is not a good thing, not the discussion we want to be having. We want to be having an abundance discussion. If you want to have an abundance discussion, you're going to need renewable power. I hope you found this interesting. If you did, please check out douglewin.com, subscribe to the Texas Energy.
Okay. Hope you appreciated that. I wanted to go back to the meeting description. I apologize. I understand that Kim did not see it. I thought she was on the ProRate Energy list. I'll make sure she is. This is the meeting call. And what we did just now was looked at the last video that referred to in this description. So I said at the very beginning, make sure you watch this video. And it's hard to sum it up in 1 minute, but what Doug Lewin did is said that we are losing the race against China. And whether we decide we're in a race with China or not, we need a lot more electricity. And the cheapest way to do that was with wind and solar. Okay, so the other thing that I wanted to point out is that this particular discussion, which is on the Electricity Brain Trust, and you can see the end of it, was initiated by one of the founders of the Electricity Brain Trust, Jim Lazar. And he started this thread on June 14th, not that long ago, and it's had many comments. The last comment is the one I wanted you to pay attention to, which is from Kay. And she jumped in with both hands and both feet, because the fact is her business is at stake. She has over $1 million invested in a business that could easily earn 10 or 15 million if she can get it rolling, and it's been killed if that bill passes like it was passed by the Senate, by the House. So what did she do? So just a few days later, she wrote this. This week I spent 2 days lobbying both House and Senate members, mostly Senate on both sides, universally got the point that we need more energy to handle our expected demand due to AI and other uses. When we mentioned that ZE Verona is 5 years backlogged on gas turbines, namely we can't do gas turbines because we can't get them. And it takes 10 years to build a nuclear plant. If we're lucky, then they started listening. So then I put the kicker on them. If you may not like renewable energy, we can go from approval to delivering power in less than 2 years. I mean, if you don't like it, but still we can do it in 2 years. And it's three times faster than gas turbines, 5 times faster than nuclear. We can't meet the AI demand if we don't apply wind and solar. And so both sides listened. And a related matter appears that the Senate bill is nearly written. Republicans are looking for is a pay for, namely a way to pay for, extend the Trump tax cuts. As it turns out, the biggest bang for the buck was solar by 4 and was cut the most. I haven't seen the final bill, should be out this week, but it looks like the worst the House impulses have been tempered with the new bill. So this is what the new bill. Grid scale solar will have to the end of 26, as long as its construction is started by 26, all the way to 2028. The production tax credit will survive. In case you don't know what that is, that's for wind. Okay, advanced manufacturing tax credit will survive. Energy storage will survive. Okay, nuclear and thermal will also, geothermal will survive. Leasing solar plants will survive, but the big losers are residential solar and energy efficiency, and they both sunset by the end of this year. And she said, well, that's the best news she can do. So that's good. And I wanted you to understand that we're talking about the real key problems that face in the country. And it's wonderful they have Kay as our ally and on this. But I also want to point out that I also sent another email out to everyone on the list. And I sent that out, another comment, which was sent by Richard McCann. He sent that out today around 11 o'clock in the morning, our time. And he said, unfortunately, grid-scale solar also takes a number of years because it's time needed to construct transmission. On the other hand, distributed solar is the fastest way to meet a grid by a factor of 2 because it's already distributed. It's already connected to the transmission system. So when you add the tax credit, it will make even more difficult to meet the rising demand. This is sort of a rebuttal to what Kay wrote. So I wanted to get back to where we were in that conversation. And let's see where it was. Here it is. So I wanted you to see the prospect of that and give people a chance to comment before we dive into the other two elements of the proposed meeting, which is about the gambit plan played by Preston Kay and the new city council members who might be interested in energy. So somebody want to comment on the video we just saw and my comments about it? No? Okay, well, so
I'll comment.
Sure. Oh, go ahead, Chris. Yeah.
Okay. Again, I'm not trying to offend anybody, but that was a complete waste of time. A
okay.
complete waste of time.
And what do you think, Chris?
Well, again, if you think that you're going to convince a Republican to vote against leadership on energy, okay, you are crazy. Okay, the Republican Party gets about $2.5 billion, okay, from the renewable energy or from the fossil fuel industry, not just the Koch brothers, okay, not just the, the oil and natural gas people, okay, but it's also, city developments, things that are around Louisiana that ultimately profit from the idea of having these gas and oil refineries and processing plants and things along those lines. That the reason that liquid natural gas plant is actually not in Freeport, but actually Palacios, Texas, is because there's a nuclear power plant 20 miles away. And they're paying 4.5 cents a kilowatt hour, okay, which is less than it costs the nuclear power plant to generate power. Now,
Absolutely.
who is subsidizing that? The residential sector.
Right.
And when they talk about eliminating the residential sector from renewable energy incentives and things along those lines, all they're trying to do is preserve their market share the way that it exists today. That's it. But, Kay going to Washington to meet with senators and congressmen to convince them to vote against their leadership position it's just naive. I mean, it's like bankrupt naive. Okay. I mean, you want to get a senator or a congressman to change their position to buck leadership, let them know that their seat is on the line. They've never done anything. There is no data to support anywhere that what the public feels or what the public good does or has ever affected a piece of legislation. It's not a factor because the public doesn't fund elections. The oil and natural gas industry and big pharma and big Wall Street, those people form election or fund elections, keep congressmen in Congress, and consequently, they have all the power. Literally, 100% of Americans could be saying we need to do X, okay? And Congress would still do Y, because how they feel about it has nothing to do with the number one important thing to a congressman. Okay, it's not his reputation, it's not his wife, it's not his kids, it's his seat in Congress. And if you don't propose something that potentially endangers that, not during a general election, but during his primary when he's really, really vulnerable, well, then you're wasting your breath. But it also tells the congressman that the person coming in there talking to them doesn't understand politics. I mean, and this guy talking about all this endless need for energy. Okay, I work with people that look at long range forecasts, and the reason Wall Street isn't even investing in oil and natural gas now is because they see the potential for the future for a dramatic reduction in the need for energy, not more of it. I mean, you know, Elon Musk is running 38 trailer power plants, okay, at his AI facility in Kentucky. And what is the last thing Mitch McConnell is going to do? He's going to approve a nuclear or a liquid natural gas or renewable energy farm, okay, to support Elon Musk AI, okay, server facility outside of Knoxville. The thing of it is that within 50 miles of that, there's 300 years worth of nuclear fuel that was already mined in the 1950s or 40s and 50s. 300 years. So we got to get something on this, if I'm going to continue to participate, that's based upon reality. Saying, well, I love the fact that Kay is interacting with us, but what she did was no favor to us and our cause. None. And the fact that she can go to Washington and get meetings and sit down with senators and representatives, that's great. But if her message is you need to do the right thing, okay, that's just politically naive. Politically naive. Okay.
Well, I was wondering. I noticed this. In that vein, I think I noticed in the video it was first framed as we're losing against China in
Right.
energy in this way. And I'm wondering, do you think that kind of messaging would be more effective for maybe Republican senators or
it's not effective at
members?
all. There's nothing we can do.
No.
There's nothing we can do from a policy standpoint to affect what China does. But it makes it the perfect political issue, because you can go, oh,
Yeah.
China bad, China bad, China bad, and you don't ever have to do a fucking thing. Okay, the number one thing that a politician loves to talk all day about is when somebody asks him to do something he has no power to do. He goes, yes, we should be doing you. I'm telling you, I'm all over that. I want to change. Okay, but he's got no power to change it. Same thing. You can make inflation worse. You can't make inflation better. You can make the grid worse, but you can't make it better. The only way that you're going to ultimately succeed at this endeavor, from my opinion, again, only my opinion, I've only spent 30 years thinking about it, okay, is ultimately create a scenario where 10 or 12 senators, Republican primaries, okay, are ultimately, okay, at risk of losing their seats. And if you create that kind of scenario, okay, where they get primaried, where there's a risk of losing their seats, they might take a chance against leadership, but probably not. But even if you got those 10 or 12, don't think that there's not a Christian cinema or a mansion in the Democratic Party who's going to come up with some kind of objection to make sure that doing the thing that the public wants and for the public good just failed by a few votes. I mean, I'm telling you, this group has some really, really smart people, but we've got to really think about the direction the leadership is taking. If you want to be effective, now, if you want to keep getting together on Monday and meet, well, we can continue along the road we're going. But I've been doing this since November, and I don't know that we've accomplished a single thing, okay, since November. Have we?
Yeah, Myron, what was the most recent docket intervention? A week or two ago? I think we've produced a lot of different recommendations and legal documents for the city.
Okay,
Myron,
well, I mean, is that a function
Myron,
of the group? Is that a function of the group, or could any single person sit down and write that up?
well, go ahead, Myron, if you want to expand on that, since you've been leading that initiative.
Sharon, you gonna let Sachs out? Okay.
Well, what was that?
Sharon's gonna let the dog out. She's making noise.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Myron, did you hear the question?
I think so.
It was basically, what have we done since November? I wasn't sure if you could
Let me
summarize
give
some
you.
of the docket participation, but
So one of the problems is one way to look at the problem is think globally and act locally, which is the way I've always addressed the question of how do I decide what I do? And we think there's a chance to make real change in the way the utility grid works by proving that it works in New Orleans. Sharon, please stop talking, close the door and please stop talking. Okay, so and so we entered the DER docket, which has $32 million on the table. And the solution recommended by the Alliance and Together New Orleans was to spend that money putting batteries in homes. And they would get 2 or 3 times as much money as they put in because of the various federal tax credits, the IRA and the other ones. And so it could turn into over $100 million spent on batteries in New Orleans. And we all agreed that was a good thing. But we also thought it was naive not to do it without good planning. So we proposed, Sharon, please stop talking. Close the door and stop talking. Sharon?
You want me to stop reading too?
Yes,
Talking really low, very low.
I know. So we participated, and on Kay's advice, we recommended planning. And we actually proved, or in my opinion, close to proved, that poor planning has led to a lot of problems in New Orleans, particularly on May 25th. We had the power outage that Doug Lewin mentioned, and most of us heard about. 100 megawatts or hundreds of thousands of people lost power during that Memorial Weekend day. And we didn't know why, and we analyzed it. We had 2 consecutive meetings. The last 2 meetings were about analysis, and published the result and sent us to the list what that result is. I'll send it again if you don't remember what it was. And we talked about it at the last meeting, and what came up was a very interesting thing, that that Winter Storm Uri, which happened in the early part of the year, late winter 2021 in the I think February. And when that happened, MISO asked Louisiana to shed over 100 megawatts, maybe 150, 200 megawatts. And of that, 80 megawatts fell in New Orleans. And we did that load shedding with a machete versus a scalpel. And Dan analyzed the result of this. There was a meeting and wherein I said we should have used our smart meters, but nevertheless, a docket was rolled out and the docket said we would do planning, and that is we would plan a way to shed with a scalpel versus with a machete. And that was a result of a docket that ended in mid 2021. It should have generated a way to shed that could have been advertised to MISO and therefore had a much less deleterious effect of New Orleans 4 years later when we had this. But the fact that we didn't use it, we didn't follow through on it, shows that we have short-term memory, we have poor planning approach. That the idea that we need to do planning helps us have a better grid was reinforced by our analysis, and we published that analysis. So I would say those are two or three things that we did, Chris. And the question is, did it have the impact that we want? Well, not yet, but there's potential. And if I don't want to spend all the time answering Chris's question, but I can answer it implicitly by talking about the other two items on the list. The other two
Sure.
items on the
Well,
list.
if I were just to jump in as well, I wanted to point out that Dr. Saeed, a member on our board of directors, as well as Myron and myself, are co-authoring a paper that's currently in review with IGI in a book on environmental efficiency, and I think we're 2 chapters co-authoring on that. Now, I mean, the timeline for that is probably the end of the year or late fall, but we're hearing back from the peer-reviewed editors in the next month or two. But I guess what it is, we have a lot of projects that are ongoing. We do a little bit of everything. But anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Let me say that what Kay asked me about 3 weeks ago was, can we find another constituency to help us sell the planning project to New Orleans? And she asked me, and I couldn't think of one. So I'm underlining this item number 2 and going to talk about it for a few minutes. Press Kabakoff has decided to jump in with both legs, both hands, to lead an effort to find a constituency. And he's working with Kay. And what they decided to do was to pick on the clergy in New Orleans. Reverend Manning, who leads GNICD, and another leader of the clergy. And they're working on getting them to join together. How could you be against planning? And planning is terribly important. And as we showed in our own analysis, if you don't plan, then you fail. And there's either the guy who plans to fail or fails to plan, and you get basically the same result. So that's going on. I can tell you more about that, but I didn't want to lose the opportunity to talk about something that Chris has actually asked us to do, which is to get involved in the election. There is an election for city council in October. That's the first primary election. And there are apparently 2 people running for city council, Amy McCarron for District A and Matthew Willett for the at-large seat vacated by Elena Moreno. And I know that that Amy McCarron is all on this issue of the May 25th load shed. I'm just going to click on this link to the Facebook website, and it should show what I wanted to talk about. Namely, this is what she wrote. My full statement regarding this was on May 26th. Regarding the power outage, I'm calling on the current council to demand answers from MISO and Entergy as to what happened and why. As your next council member, I'll be a strong voice on the council and demand transparency and accountability on these issues. And then here is a little picture of power outage. City council is responsible for regulating. We urge the council to demand answers Now, we actually studied their response. The city council did something on June the 4th, and we studied their response and wrote an article about it. Like many in District 8 in the city, were without power for several hours due to regional transmission organization ordering a forced large-scale power outage. We have learned that this was done with little to no notice to regulators. We believe this unacceptable, but she's actually poorly informed. The problem wasn't caused by MISO. The problem was caused by the city council and the way Entergy ran, because the city council didn't regulate them properly. If the city council had actually followed through and created their load shed solution that was mandated in 2021, they could have offered that to MISO and had a much cleaner scalpel versus machete load shed. But that's, so she didn't understand. The question whether she understand is not the issue. The question is whether she's concerned and willing to make this a campaign issue is obvious, and that's why I really appreciate that. Similarly, we were advised by Andrew Tizzolo that both of these candidates are probably going to be active in utility policy in the future. For those of you who don't remember, he is the chief of staff for Elena Moreno. He recommended Matthew Willard, and I looked up about Matthew Willard, and I found, excuse me a second, I've got a barking dog making too much noise.
It's actually some really good noise reduction technology, because on our end we're not able to. I know I'm not able to hear it at all. So it must have been fairly loud to disrupt my end.
Anyway, I apologize.
Yeah, we couldn't hear
Still-
Sharon either. We couldn't hear the
Still
dog
hosting
or
my
Sharon.
son's dogs.
Oh
Daniel,
yeah, I couldn't hear that either.
I apologize. You guys were talking. I don't want to shut you down.
Oh no, we were just saying that your computer must have good noise reduction, because I didn't hear the dogs at all.
Oh, yeah, it was driving me
Sharon
crazy.
earlier.
But I just want to say that Matthew obviously is a technical person. He founded the STEM Innovation Caucus in the Democratic Caucus in the state legislature. And he did get some progress. He got the legislator to make authorize 10,000 grants for homeowners if they make their homes more capable to fortify their roofs. And he proposed solutions to the citizens property insurance process, the Surge and Water Board. So he seems to be the kind of person who takes utility issues to heart and runs with it. So I only throw this out to suggest, like Chris did 5 or 6 meetings back, that if we want to be politically effective, we should get behind some of the people running for city council and get them to recognize their opportunity to do good utility regulation and educate them. So anyway, that's what this meeting is. And I wanted to give people the scope of that. So I hope I haven't monopolized the meeting and other people want to join in. But I also want to give credit to Daniel, because between the last 2 meetings, Daniel came up with some really good insights as to how the city council has really dropped the ball. He said it's deja vu all over again. I could bring up that email where we had the tools to solve a problem and we set about trying to solve it, did not solve it, and forgot we worked on it. And so we found ourselves in the same hole 4 years later. Did I paraphrase that right, Dan?
More or less, Myron, but one thing you didn't get accurate was the load shed request for MISO in 2021 was for like 25 or 27, and they accidentally shut down 80.
Right. I'm glad you said that. I was going to think that too.
So
That-
it was-
Go ahead, Ann.
Oh, yeah, Myron, just to comment on your mention of Pastor Manning. You may already know he leads a group called
The Greater,
I
the
just
Greater
went
New
by,
Orleans Interfaith Climate Coalition.
he does that and, just, my mind just went blank. Well, in any event, there's that, and there's another group that he leads. But also, I may be wrong, but he may be running for city council as
He
well.
is, he is.
He
In
is,
fact,
okay.
he is currently running against JP Morrell and approached Press Kavakov for a contribution. And Press, he didn't think it made any sense to run against Morrell. He's a shoo-in. It's a waste of time.
Oh,
I'd rather not say everything I think about that issue. But anyway, so it looks, yes, it's nice to know that somebody who's interested in energy is running for council. And I don't think either of those people are as deep a study as I'd like running the show. I have lots of evidence to support that. But I think that's as negative as I want to be in this conversation.
sure. Justice and Beyond is the other group that he leads, that
Right,
Pastor Manning the lead. So he's he is he has a strong leadership and a following.
right,
I'm glad that you want to bring him on.
right. He also ran for Louisiana Public Service Commission a few years ago. So he's definitely interested in energy issues. It's not that he's not interested, it's the question is whether or not he really gets his head around it and helps us move projects along. He's probably more committed to energy than JP Morrell, which means he might win. But Press doesn't think that JP Morrell can be unseated. So that's why Press is not going down that road. But it's good to know that there are people vying for these seats with an interest in energy. And I talked to Kay about what we should do with these two people running for city council, Amy and Matthew. And she said we should send them both the report we created last week, as well as one that Kay created. I'm gonna see if I can find it right now. Kay sent something, if I can find it. Wait, I did the search in the wrong place. Let's see. I go back to Gmail. I have to put the search in the Gmail string, not in the here. Let's see here. And it's going to be in inbox. It's going to be K. And she said something to us. Let's see. I can find it. I want to say it's from K. All right. And K, not just has K in it. And
Myron,
yes,
while you're
yes.
looking for it, I'm just curious. I missed the beginning of the meeting. Did you all talk about the utility committee meeting today?
No, we did not. Did not. But I want to quickly tell you this is something that Kay wrote because this particular short was supposed to be like half as so long. This was something that Kay wrote on the request of Press and I, because we finally had a meeting with representatives from the Alliance for Affordable Energy Together New Orleans. And that is Logan and Logan's Alliance, and Natalie is Together New Orleans. And so she was asked to write a short letter. And this is the short letter. If you want, I can send it to everyone. Here's a short couple of paragraphs of what we've encouraged Myron to propose to New Orleans. The goal to facilitate the building a bridge to the future for the city of New Orleans, grid advocates who need to work together to facilitate the real change of the future rather than incremental approaches. I don't know if you guys can see this, the screen might be too small. For ratepayers, environmental groups, effort. We propose a broad systems level approach managed by a cadre of U.S. international consultants that support all customers through a structured changes to how the grid is organized, market reforms that reward customer contributions, tariff innovations like rates that incentivize flexible energy use, battery storage, and demand response, and long-term roadmap that provides clarity and coordination. And then she names lots of places where this is done: Australia, United Kingdom, New York, Connecticut, Hawaii, and possible consultants. Okay. But notice that we had just in September, May 25th, another example of poor long-term planning. So, now, Dan, would you like to mention something about what happened at the meeting? And we have very little time, but go for it.
Well, I mean, just a quick summary. I don't have the agenda in front of me, but first it was the new gas company just being asked about the transition from Entergy natural gas to Delta. And they did a fine job. And then there was a ordinance for the well, there were three things. There's one for EV chargers and updating the ordinance so that people can get EV chargers on their home if they don't even have a driveway. So that was good. And that got passed, just has to go for the council. The solar, community solar thing also passed. Updates to that ordinance to make that more feasible. So that was good. And then the last thing was,
There's something about benchmarking. What was that
oh
about?
yeah, and then the benchmarking thing got approved too.
What is that?
Buildings over 20,000 and 50,000 will have to be submitted to the city for the
Have to
benchmarking
publish
program.
our energy use.
Yep,
Right.
so it was
okay.
good. It was a good meeting.
Okay. I will say that we've been lobbying to get the community solar bill better and more useful. To little effect, but we joined those dockets as well. So anyway, that's what's going on. I'm sorry we didn't meet Chris's expectation, but maybe we're trying to do too many things.
Well, no. I'm going to jump in and give a shout out to Chris as well as Dr. Said. So Chris, thank you because you keep our group on track. And it's so easy to go through the motions, and your mindset is always, is this effective, and what's going to change? How's it going to affect things? And sometimes I think it's really necessary to have that kind of mindset in our group. So I really appreciate you, Chris. And then Dr. Said came in a little bit later, but I want to give a shout out for a co-authorship on a paper that's currently in review on environmental efficiency and conservation efforts. So,
Okay, Kim, reach out to me after the meeting. You have my phone number. I have yours. Let's make sure you get on the ProRate list.
and then thank you, Tal, as well.
I think Dr. Said wants to say something.
I just wanted to thank you all for working on the chapters. The two chapters, they should be for us. We should get within 2 weeks, we should get some feedback on the corrections. Thank you, Myron and Brendan Moore, for working. And it's a nice collaboration. Thank you.
Well, it's really Brendan, but anyway, thank you.
I appreciate everybody.
Okay, so it's after 9 o'clock. We should shut down.
As you know,
the audio is failing Brendan. But anyway, it's time to shut
sorry,
down.
it's cutting out. I'm in the mountains driving, so I'm sorry.
Okay, so everyone, thank you for coming. Hopefully more people will chime in next time. Okay, hope this meeting was interesting and useful. So good night.
Good night. Thank you, Myron.
Thank you,
I'm gonna
Myron.
call you up, Kim, and make sure you're connected. Okay,
More call me.
Good night.
good night.